Welcome into Buckeyes tomorrow morning on Thursday, July 30th, as we are now just 37 days away from the opening of the season. The Ball State game, 121 days away from the game. The show today, proudly sponsored by Jeff Ruby's Columbus. Jeff Ruby's Columbus proudly offering nationally acclaimed USDA prime steaks, seafood, and sushi, impeccable service, live entertainment, and an attention to detail that is simply unmatched. Go to jeffruby.com/Columbus to check out the menu and make a reservation today. Of course, the whole Buckeye Insiders crew, as you know, has been at Big Ten Media Days in Chicago all week. Yesterday, we got to hear from our guys as Ryan Day, Jeremiah Smith, Julian Sayin, and Jaylen McClain all took the podium to get peppered with questions, run the car wash. They said a lot to a whole lot of people. What were the biggest takeaways that's maybe kind of across all of them we heard? I think the number one thing I would say that we heard all of them mention was this year's schedule.
Affect preparation? No, they don't affect preparation. We still got to prepare each and every week. Like it's just a regular game, but we know it's a very good opponent that we're playing probably every other week, and the schedule. So, I mean, we got bangers every week, so we got to be prepared. So, yeah.
And this year's schedule is an absolute bear. If you ask ESPN, it's roughly the 8th ranked schedule in the country or something of that nature. And that's ridiculous. This schedule with Texas, Illinois, at Iowa, at Indiana, at USC, Oregon at home, at Nebraska, Michigan. I mean, we're talking about a potential, let's say, honestly, 5 games that you can look at and say, Ohio State could lose this game. And going into a schedule like that, if you're the head coach, do you like it? Is it a good thing? Is it going to help you be more prepared? Ryan Day said, I mean, if you win the games, it's a good thing. And he's right. He's got to win 10, might be able to get in with 9 in certain situations that I think you could lay out there, depending on the competition. But the goal's got to be to win 10 games. Jeremiah talked about this and said that they will be much more prepared because last year they didn't play anybody. I do think it's interesting when we talk about this, as Julian Sayin said something kind of similar, but he didn't quite say we didn't play anybody like JJ did. You know, when we look at teams, even in Buckeyes past teams, that's played in a softer Big Ten some years, maybe had 2 tough games with Penn State in the game, went into the postseason, and all of a sudden we see that Buckeyes team get something exposed, and they got no time to correct it. They're in the postseason. What we see in 2024? 2024, they travel out to Autzen. The defense got exposed that night, despite the Buckeyes almost winning, losing by 1 point. And they had time to correct it. They had time to fix it, went on to win a national championship. Now with a schedule like this, you're going to get that game against those primetime teams, and you're going to have time to fix it. And to me, that's why I think a schedule like this is certainly much better than a schedule like you had last year. Now, going into last year's schedule, I didn't believe that it was terrible going in. It ended up being pretty terrible coming out. But maybe somewhere in between is the perfect draw. But this year, the Buckeyes just happen to fall with 6 teams above kind of that midline of the Big Ten, 3 in the bottom line of the Big Ten, as you hear the ambulances whizzing by here in Chicago. Another thing that I wanted to hit on that Ryan Day talked about, the running backs. If you talk about a position of, I don't want to say concern, but one that he said he's going to be keeping extra special attention on as we go into the preseason is the running back room. The running back room, and of course he listed everybody off by name: Bo Jackson, Jacoby Jackson, Isaiah West, Turbo Rogers, Legend Bay, Favorite Key. And he talked about this crew and said that he's just going to have special attention on them. And what we can't have from them, we're going to need a lot out of them. What we can't have from them is when you look at J.K. Dobbins, who had a big season his first year, second year, and then third year, big year again. And he said, I want to avoid saying sophomore slump, but that's exactly what happened with J.K. Year number 2, his yards per carry went down tremendously. The whole year was just not, it was like, who is this guy? He's not the same guy we saw the year before. And he is nervous and wants to avoid seeing that out of Bo or out of Isaiah because they're going to be so dependent on them this year with the new running scheme, as they're going to run a lot more outside zone. And you got Arthur Smith on the job helping Tyler Bowen. Of course, he was asked a lot about his coaches. He talked about the administration and how thankful he is that they've ponied up essentially given approval for all the excellent coaching hires they've made. He thinks this is the best coaching staff that they've had since he's been at Ohio State. And I'd agree, man. It is kind of an all-star cast. He also talked about the goals of the season in an interesting way, and particularly when it comes to the Big Ten championship. So normally we would hear him say the three goals at the end of every season: win the game, win the Big Ten championship, win the national championship. That's always what we've known. He was talking about these goals, and he said, to me, it's about win the game, win the national championship. You want to win the Big Ten championship, but the Big Ten championship is how you win the national championship. And this really kind of caught fire throughout the place, throughout the Hilton. Was he saying that he feels that the Big Ten championship is less important than the other two are? And I don't know if he feels it's less important, but just feels that the purpose of it, more so than winning the actual conference, is the stepping stone to catapult me to winning the national championship. In my opinion, it's always kind of been a distant third of those three goals, but some may disagree. I say oftentimes when we talk about this at times, I got a room full of Buckeye memorabilia. And out of all that Buckeye memorabilia, I found one thing that said Big Ten champs. One thing. Whole lot of national champs, man. Whole lot of things commemorating the game, but not much stuff regarding the Big Ten championship. Players that he mentioned that made me kind of take notice. He talked about Legend Bay in a way that was very, just a quick couple of mentions of can he play? Oh, yeah, I mean, he can play. It was just like, yeah, man, he's still all in on the talent there, despite maybe a few little hiccups. He had an injury. He lost the number 2 for a little while, but everything is all systems go. And he's certainly really impressed with his talent, as we know. But he also brought up Chris Henry Jr. Freshman Chris Henry Jr., he talked about him in a way that made me feel quite confident in Chris Henry Jr. this year. Said he's gained about 10 to 15 pounds, which he needed. I mean, he was a little skinny, but he looks a lot skinnier on that 6'5" frame, I think, than he really is, because he is such a long guy. Jeremiah Smith was talking about some other players and some players that are standing out to him. The one player he was asked, who's the one guy that nobody's really talking about or isn't getting enough publicity that we should be talking about more? His answer was Kenyatta Jackson. Now, Kenyatta Jackson is certainly someone that we talk about plenty, but he went on to elaborate on why he thinks not enough. Now, he brought up Chase Young, and he said, I'm not saying he's Chase Young now, but I talk to him all the time. It's Jeremiah saying this. I talk to him and I say, man, you're 6'5", you're 265. You could be like this. And then Jeremiah was asked, is that something you're doing now? Because this is not the kind of vocal style guy he was. He said, freshman year, I didn't talk, really at all to anybody. But this year, yeah, I'm comfortable now. I'm talking to guys like this, letting them know what I expect out of them, letting them know what we expect out of them. And that is awesome to hear. Kenyatta Jackson, for instance, does feel like some of that where, is he a superstar? Does he really want to be a superstar? You feel like he does, like last year when he went to Matt Patricia and said, hey, I want some more. I want to show off my pass rush moves. I want to do a little more of this. And Patricia let him. And he did great. Well, we see him in that role this year. I think the big defining factor on whether or not we get to see him play in more of that Caden Curry role is if they find someone who can fill his spot as the strong side defensive end that they can rely on to be able to move him around a little more and give him a little more freedom. If he gets it, I think he's going to blow up. And Jeremiah thinks so too. So that was great to hear from JJ. He also mentioned Brock Boyd, and this one was amazing. So he's talking about Brock Boyd, and he literally said, if you've been a little hesitant about all right, what is this really when it comes to Brock Boyd? How much can we really expect out of this? Is this just a kid having a great spring? Is the ceiling relatively capped off? Did he just come in super advanced more than everybody? Jeremiah said, he reminds me of me coming in as a freshman, diving out, making balls, two-man, double covered, making catches. He just reminded me of me as a freshman. And I've never heard Jeremiah say that about anybody else. So Jeremiah is saying that about Brock Boyd, also who he says walks with some swag now, walks with a little limp. Was very interesting to hear him give that much praise to Brock Boyd. So really exciting stuff there. Ryan Day talking about the offensive line. Another thing I found interesting. Day was talking about the offensive line, and he said, I think the question was specifically about Austin Sareveld and whether or not moving him to right guard. We couldn't hear the questions. It was very obnoxious. You got to listen to the answer and try to decipher what the question was. But talking about Austin Sareveld potentially moving to right guard. And he said, if Phil Daniels and Ian Moore are doing great at tackle, then you can afford to do that. Or if Josh Padilla is playing great at guard, you can afford to, keep him at tackle. And when he said that, it made it pretty clear, I think, that Gabe Van Sickle, who between Gabe Van Sickle and Josh Padilla, the offensive lineman number 6 and 7, who's kind of the leader of that pack. Last year, towards the end of the year, it felt like Van Sickle was the guy that was kind of taking over there. Of course, Padilla was a little injured, but that matters. He's been injured quite a bit. But right now, as we look at it, it sounds like Padilla is that solid sixth man on the offensive line. And how we end up seeing this play out, we have assumed for a while that Austin is going to play guard, Ian at left tackle, Phil at right tackle. Is that what we see? There could be some other scenarios. One scenario that we don't think is on the table is Phil Daniels moving from right tackle to right guard, as it doesn't seem like that's just going to be something that's going to happen. I think that would be a perfect fit if you moved him to right guard, kept Sareveld and Ian Moore at the tackle. I think that's your best five. But at any rate, I do think that we learned that Padilla is most likely that number 6 man. For the final day of Big Ten Media Days, we have got Matt Rule in Nebraska, Mike Loxley in Maryland, Kyle Whittingham in Michigan, David Braun in Northwestern, Jed Fish in Washington, and Kurt Signetti in Indiana. Keep it locked in all day to Buckeye Insiders, as we will be updating you throughout the day if you're interested in hearing from all those guys and the other storylines that we pick up throughout the day. We appreciate you so much for joining us. And of course, we appreciate Jeff Ruby's Steakhouse, the award-winning upscale steakhouse in downtown Columbus, named one of the top 50 steakhouses in America by Food Network. Just go to jeffruby.com/Columbus and check out the menu and make a reservation today. And thanks so much for joining us. We'll talk to you soon.